What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we'll be talking once again about Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. I believe this will be our closing video regarding the redemption of Cyberpunk 2077. That is what we have titled this mini series, and no script, none of that BS. I just want to talk to you guys, and I hope to get some feedback from you. I was browsing Twitter or X, however you want to call it, a while back, and a guy named Gaming with Dave, that's his handle on Twitter, he asked the question, is Cyberpunk the greatest comeback in gaming history? I immediately saw that and I asked myself, is it? There's a lot of examples, I think, where you have a game that was rushed or a game that was very much anticipated, a game that took so long to come out, and when it finally comes out, the hype is at an all-time high and boom, it crashes and it burns because we, the consumer, put too much expectation on the developer. Sometimes that's our fault because we tend to want everything, and sometimes that's just not possible. We have these ideas in our heads. Oh, I want it this way. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, if I can't access every single building and do all these things, you know, that stuff rarely happens, right? So sometimes you have games that promise too much, and they sell us on this big thing and they just do all of it to get our money, take our money and run. So we've been burned, you know, as the consumer, the gamer has been burned in the past. And I feel like it's happened so much more recently because now it's a trend. Now it's acceptable for your games to be incomplete upon release. You buy a game, you're buying half a game. For the most part, because you got to do a day one patch, then you have to do an update in a couple of days because something happened, there's another update in a week because they actually couldn't get this completed and they had a deadline and they had to give it out. But then we end up losing because we paid full price for what we were expecting to be a full game. Got it! So the question of, is Cyberpunk 2077 the greatest comeback in history? Now, we need some background on that, right? So Cyberpunk 2077 was announced, and quote me if I'm wrong, because I'm not going to check right now. Quote me if I'm wrong. It was announced back in 2013. If I'm not mistaken, it was at the time announced for last gen consoles, obviously, and PC. So it was going to be coming out on the Xbox and the PS4. Now, we knew that it was going to be a big project and an undertaking, but when they announced it, nobody expected it to still not release all the way until 2020. So many years in development, many years in trying to make the game happen. The hype for the game just went up, and it skyrocketed. It got to the point where I realized, and many of you guys realized, and many people that write articles or or YouTubers or stuff like that, some of them realized that, hey, you know what? We've been hyping this game up a lot, and they're promising a lot. This might be one of those situations where somebody's gonna be disappointed. And I remember on just a personal level, I was thinking, well, I really hope that we haven't ruined the game because we're setting our expectations so high that when we receive a product, even if it's good, it won't meet our unrealistic expectations. But that ended up not happening. What ended up happening was that the game was all-time buggy when it released. It was unplayable on certain consoles. It seemed like an unfinished product. The mechanics of the game were abysmal. The graphics weren't even all that amazing because depending on where you were playing, the frames would drop like crazy. It would glitch. It would kick you out. NPCs in buildings or stuff wouldn't finish rendering. It was a massive, massive failure at launch. And because the studio was so well respected, CD Projekt Red, due to their Witcher series and specifically Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, they created one of the best, if not the best, if not the most revolutionary RPG in the last 10 years. There was high expectations for Cyberpunk 2077. There were high expectations for CD Projekt Red, but they just couldn't deliver it. Maybe they crumbled under the pressure. Maybe the executives, the people that want that money, the people that the bottom dollar is all that matters, maybe those people pressured the developers, and CD Projekt Red couldn't give us the game that we wanted and the game that we deserved and the game that they should have given us, right? Or it could also be that they also felt the pressure from the fans. They had delayed and delayed and delayed and pushed the game back so many times that maybe they thought, hey, we're gonna lose them as fans, or they're gonna continue to think they're being lied to. So we have to try to get this out on this day that we set, and let's stick to it. Let's just get it out to them, and maybe we'll patch a couple of things that need to be patched after it releases. Well, that would have been great if there were only a little bit or minor, small things that needed to be fixed with Cyberpunk. But to be honest, the game was just, if you go back to the 2020 and you see all the videos that were coming out and all the content surrounding Cyberpunk 2077 at the time, and if you were one of those players, you don't need nobody to tell you. You remember what it was like. It was a disaster. So the question, once again, is Cyberpunk 2077 gaming's greatest comeback? Well, you'd have to look at the whole history of games that released in a similar vein to Cyberpunk. Games that were wanted by the people, games that were asked for by the people, games that were announced that took forever to come out, and they failed. They just didn't meet expectations. One could say Duke Nukem, that old series that you had one game, two games that were really good, then the third one took forever to come out, and when it came out, it just flopped, terrible, nobody loved it, and it killed the franchise. You could think of another game like No Man's Sky, which is a very recent one, right? They promised all these things, game came out, wasn't that good at all, buggy, not what they promised, didn't deliver. But over the course of 2 years and up until now, they put money, they put time, they put resources into bringing that game back. Now it's an enjoyable experience. It has made its own community and it's thriving, right? So what do you categorize as a comeback, the greatest comeback? It's a hard question. It's like when you ask, oh, well, who's the GOAT of basketball? Some of you guys are going to be like LeBron. Some of you guys are going to be like Michael Jordan. Some of you guys are going to be somebody else. And I know a bunch of you guys might even say Kobe Bryant, and then they're going to get called out and be like, you don't know basketball. What the heck? Kobe Bryant isn't even top 10. But yeah, you get the point. When you talk about the greatest, whether it's in a positive way or a negative way, it's hard to find a definitive answer. It's not going to be resolved, or not everybody's going to come to the same conclusion all the time. So when we're talking about, is Cyberpunk 2077 the greatest comeback in gaming history? Maybe, maybe not. You have to look at its competition for that title, even though I would argue that there hasn't been that many games in the course of history, in the course of gaming's very small history, that were as hyped, as talked about as Cyberpunk 2077. Now, why is that? For some of the reasons that I mentioned before. The studio had so much pressure because what they did with The Witcher. The studio isn't the biggest studio in the world, but it's not an indie studio either. It's a big AAA studio that has experience in making these games. It's a topic or a genre that is thriving right now. That cyberpunk stuff, that Blade Runner stuff, that future stuff, that dystopian future stuff. And you're at a point with gaming where it's so hard to stand out and to make a great original story in a good and a great original setting, right? So it's not enough that the game looks beautiful. It's not enough that it's one of the craziest and most prettiest open worlds that I've ever seen. As a fan, as a consumer, you want more. And if it doesn't deliver, or if it doesn't satisfy your needs, then it failed. It's a flop. It didn't work out. So all of these things go into the question of, is this the greatest comeback in gaming history? Now, I'm sorry, I don't have in front of me a list of gaming's greatest comebacks. But in my opinion, with everything that Cyberpunk had going for it before its release, and don't even get me started on Keanu Reeves coming up on stage and just taking over at a time where Keanu was just making a comeback in his own right. He was popping off everywhere. That just skyrocketed even more. It sent it into a different stratosphere. That Cyberpunk was just going to be the greatest game that has ever released in gaming history. It's going to change the way that RPGs are played. It is going to be innovating. It is going to be the best. It is going to be the single greatest piece of gaming history or gaming anything that we've ever seen. A lot of people thought that. Go back and watch the videos if you don't believe me. So because of the pressure that they had and because it was expected to do the impossible, the comeback that they went through and the resurgence that they went through, because Cyberpunk from 2020, 2021, and even 2022 was hated on, crapped on, tore down. CD Projekt Red was tore down, hated on. It was like put in the corner. And everybody was pointing their finger at him saying, you suck, you're terrible, you're a bad investment, you are just the worst thing that ever happened to gaming. And this is a lesson to everybody who pre-orders. This is a lesson to the consumers. This is a lesson to the developers. It was like put in a corner and said, that's where your ass is going to be. And we're all going to make fun of you and we're going to bully you for years on end because you're just a piece of crap that failed. CD Projekt Red could have been like, we effed up. Our reputation is in the toilet. We didn't make the game that we promised to all of these consumers. Let's just wrap this up and move on to the next thing. They didn't do that. Whether it was pressure or whatever the case, they refunded the games for some folk. They put their head down and they went back and looked at what happened and tried to fix it. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen over a month. It didn't happen over 6 months. It didn't happen over a year. It didn't happen over a year and a half or 2 years. It took 3 years to get the game and overhaul the mechanic and to overhaul the police system and to overhaul the experience and to optimize it just right. But they did it. They took the time and they did it and they put money into it and they did not stop. Now, IGN came out with a post and it said that CD Projekt Red spent roughly $125 million turning Cyberpunk around post-launch. Some of you are going to be like, good. That's what they get. They should have done that. I don't feel pity for them. I'm not asking you to feel pity for them, but what I am saying is they spent $125 million to turn the game around, to give us a good experience. Finally, they should have done that from the beginning. I understand that, but they did it. They came back. Now Cyberpunk, if you go and you look up Cyberpunk 2077, or you look up Cyberpunk 2023, or you look up Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty, the greatest comeback ever. Cyberpunk has been redeemed. Cyberpunk this, Cyberpunk is so good. Cyberpunk is the best. You should try Cyberpunk. You should buy Cyberpunk. Now is the time. Everybody thinks that the story of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty is amazing. Everybody thinks that the gameplay for Cyberpunk 2077 is great. They think that the overhauled system is fantastic. They think that the police system that has been reworked is great. The handling of the vehicles is awesome. The fighting feels great. The game came back. So if you tell somebody in 2020 or 2021, hey, in 3 years, or you know what? I know this game is hated now and CD Projekt Red is in the toilet and they are being, dying. Watch in 3 years, man. 3 years time, 2.5 years, whatever. Everyone is going to love Cyberpunk again. And CD Projekt Red's reputation is going to slowly be rising. Will it ever be where it was with The Witcher 3? Possibly, but it isn't now, but possibly one day it will be. So when you take all of that and you take what led to them being so hyped up, their eventual downfall, and then the love that they received for bringing the game back and not giving up on it, that's something. And this has been something that has been building slowly but surely. Last year in 2022, the Steam Awards, I think, gave CD Projekt Red the Lovers of Game, or the Gamers Lovers Award.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Which is like a game that has put a lot to make a good comeback. So even then, even a couple months back, or now half a year back, right, 10 months ago, CD Projekt Red was still getting these messages from fans and consumers that they understood that the game was in a different place and they weren't giving up. So CD Projekt Red did a 360 and they made a comeback in the gaming world that is extremely difficult to do. It's not easy. Not because Cyberpunk did it, oh, everybody can do it. Not because No Man's Sky did it, not everybody can do it. No, they can't. It's a hard thing to win back the people, to win back the trust of the people. It's so hard. When you lose it, it's damn near impossible in this day and age. So I'll ask you, is Cyberpunk 2077 gaming's greatest comeback in its entire short history? Right now, I think it is.